what are we up against as human beings that make it so difficult to trust and be trustworthy? I mentioned in my opening remarks something that I think probably is controversial, and that is I'm not so sure it's that hard to develop or gain trust. It seems to me that the real issue is to how do we go about maintaining it. But I think a lot of people might question what I said and say, no, it's quite difficult to gain trust. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so first of all, thank you everyone who organized this, and thank you for the RCC and all the work that everybody on this panel actually has done over the last several months. I'm really happy to be here. So to say that the work that I do involves trust, I think is an understatement. What I do is I convene dialogues for parties in conflict all over the world. And I've worked all over the world, in the Middle East, in Sri Lanka, in Colombia. Wherever there's a hot conflict, my colleagues and I probably have had some kind of a project there. And the trust issues are what we start with. There is absolutely no trust with these parties when they come and sit down at the table. And we are supposed to be convening them so that they can come up with creative and new ideas to try to feed into the political process and the negotiation process. So it's a real challenge. This trust is the elephant, or let me put it this way, the mistrust is the elephant in the room 99% of the time. So as I said, we would convene these dialogues, and the purpose was to come up with new, fresh political ideas to end the conflict. And they were always about the political issues. And because I'm a psychologist, I tend to look at another dimension of the interactions that take place with these parties. And this issue of trust and why it is so fragile, why it breaks down so easily among communities in conflict, has always intrigued me. And as Mike pointed out, as human beings, I think we do have a natural proclivity when we enter the world to be trusting and connected. And in fact, there's a lot of research that shows that that is true, that we are hardwired to connect with each other. So my question always was, what has happened? What has happened in this room that is, obviously there's political issues that divide the parties, but I, as a psychologist, as I said, I knew there was something else going on that contributed to this distrust. And over the years, I would see the same thing no matter where I was in the world, bringing these parties together. And what I would see is that there was an emotional dimension to the interactions that took place between these parties. They were never talked about. We would be focusing so much on the political issues, but these emotional, what I call these emotional undercurrents, were always present in the room. And I realized, again, looking at this sort of nonverbal interaction, I realized, wait a minute, I think I know what this level is about. I think it has nothing to do with the politics, but it has to do with being a human being. And what the parties would want to be saying if this unspoken conversation were to take place, it would be something like, how dare you treat us this way? Don't you see we're human beings? Can't you see we're suffering by your actions and by the way you're treating us? And so, to me, these issues, these emotional issues that never ever get discussed, are all about dignity. And to me, there's also an inextricable link between dignity and respect. Dignity and trust. Dignity and respect is another issue. But dignity and trust is inextricably linked, and I'll explain to you why I think that's true. I've done just years of research on dignity and came up with 10 ways in which we feel our dignity can be honored. I call them the 10 elements of dignity, and I'll just briefly go through them because I know I don't have that much time. But the 10 elements of dignity, the first one is acceptance of identity. People feel their dignity is honored when their identity is accepted. We feel where dignity is honored if we're recognized for our recognition is the element. We feel honored when we're recognized for our unique qualities and our way of life. Acknowledgement. Well, every single human being wants to be seen, wants to be heard, wants to be listened to. Inclusion. Well, it's an act of honoring dignity when we bring people together and make them feel like they belong, that they're a part of something, whether it's a family or a community or a nation. People need to feel they belong. Fairness, well, that goes without saying. We all want to be treated in a fair and even-handed way. Safety, well, this is physical safety and this is also psychological safety, because we want to feel that we can be safe from being humiliated, safe from being publicly excluded, publicly shamed. Independence, well, we all want to feel a sense of freedom and independence. Understanding, who doesn't want to be understood? It's an act of honoring dignity to seek deeper understanding of people. Benefit of the doubt. Well, here, this has to do with trust. It's an act of honoring dignity when we give people the benefit of the doubt. And I'll say more about that in a minute. The last element of dignity is accountability. Everybody deserves an apology when someone does them harm. So here's the thing about trust in these elements of dignity. If even one of these elements is violated, if somebody feels their identity is being trashed, if somebody feels marginalized, misunderstood, excluded, that is enough to break trust right there. So these violations of dignity, as I have observed in all the countless conflict resolution efforts I've been involved in, there are always, I think we can explain the mistrust because, frankly, almost all of these elements of dignity are violated in these big international conflicts. But let me tell you, it's not just limited to international conflicts. It's the conflicts in our families, it's the conflicts in our communities, it's the conflicts in our workplace. They're all, if you can look at these deeper issues of dignity, and you know that the problem is people break trust, don't feel they can trust others when they know that there's a possibility that they'll do them harm. And again, these elements of dignity are not about physical harm necessarily. That's bad enough. But these psychological elements, these psychological injuries, break trust equally as quickly. And the other thing about this is that when these elements of dignity get violated, there's no place to go with them. All right, there's nowhere to take these injuries, because if we break an arm or have a physical injury, we go to the emergency room, we get the cast put on, and everything is all better. But wounds to our dignity stay alive until we figure out how to heal them. And in my view, there is no way that trust can be rebuilt without looking at these deeper issues of dignity. And in fact, these emotional events actually are, they're very difficult to get at by appealing to somebody's intellect. All right? You can't tell somebody that they've got to trust another person. You can't. Forget it. It's impossible. Trust me. Trust me, I know this. But these deeply, deeply profound emotional injuries need another kind of a process. They need a different process than sitting down and talking. People need to be seen, people need to tell their stories, people need to have their day in court, and there are all kinds of very simple ways to get people to look at these deeper injuries, but it doesn't involve a PhD. Emotional injuries need very simple, basic processes. And they're universal. I'm telling you, if we can crack this nut here with dignity, we can not only rebuild trust, but my hope around this issue is that we can, because every single human being on this planet yearns to be treated with dignity. Every single one of us wants it. And I think in resolving conflicts, if we can get people to the place where they recognize that we have a shared, I would say even highest common denominator, that we all want to be treated well. And if we can direct our processes around focusing on these deeper issues of dignity, I think we're going to see trust rebuild quite, not only quickly, because if the processes are right, they can be quick, but also sustainably. They'll endure over time if these issues are addressed. So I think I'm out of time.
Very interesting, Donna. Some really good points. Thank you.